I'm gonna shot my parents. I think they're all breathing. They're on the floor.
What suburb are you in?
They're not breathing. What do I do?
What suburb are you in?
North Ryde.
North Ryde.
Yes.
And your parents
They're not moving.
are both being shot, have they?
I don't know. There's a lot of blood everywhere. My mama.
Just hold on. Yeah, we will. We're sending the ambulance now.
Police and medical personnel quickly arrived at the scene. Unfortunately, out of the family of 4, only one person survived. Seeing him huddled in a corner, police couldn't help but feel heartbroken. What happened next was beyond their expectations. Just 3 days after the incident, he was already anxiously asking about the inheritance. At the funeral, he sang the song "Sweet Day." He used the state's compensation money to buy a luxury car. His behavior inevitably aroused suspicion. Naturally, the police began to focus on it. It turned out to be a story full of lies and greed. He had lied to his parents, relatives, and friends. He even deceived himself. Since being convicted in 2004, he has always maintained his innocence. On April 0th, 2023, the appeal was once again rejected. To this day, he is still in prison. So what exactly happened that year? Let's turn back time to 2001 to explore the details of this case. The story takes place in El. This is a suburb in New South Wales, near Macquarie University, known as Australia's Silicon Valley. It is home to many high-tech companies such as Microsoft, HP, Oracle, and 3M, among others, with branches in Australia, and it has convenient transportation, with both train stations and bus routes, only 15 kilometers from the central business district. This makes it an ideal place for the middle class, both bustling and tranquil. Located at 6 Collins Street is a 2-story villa with 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 2 parking spaces, and a 531 square meter lawn. In 1999, a man named Sef Gonzales bought the villa for 200,000 Australian dollars and renovated it. Family of 4 officially moved in December 2000. Teddy was a determined man, born into a poor family in Baguio City, Philippines, in 1950. As the 4th child in the family, Eddie never resented his circumstances, but always worked hard, passing the entrance exams and graduating from the law school at the University of Baguio. Near graduation, Teddy met a girl named Mary Loeva Claridades. Mary was a junior student, 3 years younger than him. Two fell in love at first sight. Mary, the eldest in her family, was gentle and generous. Like Teddy, she was also very diligent. In 1977, right after Mary graduated, the two got married. Although Teddy devoted himself to his work, he was a very romantic man. In life, he often created small surprises for his wife, such as giving flowers, candlelit dinners, and more. On September 16, 1980, their son, Sef Gonzales, was born. The name had a special meaning that Teddy intended to reveal on Sef's 21st birthday. 3 years later, on July 9, 1983, their daughter Claudine was born. As a lawyer, Teddy began accumulating wealth from real estate and gradually ventured into other business areas like audio stores, pharmacies, and hotels. Teddy himself was very capable, but his wife's family was even more powerful. Mary's father was the mayor of Baguio City from 1986 to 1988. During that time, Teddy served as the mayor's secretary. It can be said that their family was well versed in both politics and business. In 1989, Teddy used all his savings to build a 4-story hotel with 40 rooms. The business thrived, but less than a year later, 7.7 magnitude earthquake struck Baguio City, claiming 1,242 lives. In an instant, Teddy's career and home were reduced to rubble. Worse still, when the earthquake occurred, his son Sef was trapped in a stairwell. Teddy risked his life to crawl into the crevice to rescue his son. This courageous act left him with chronic ligament injuries. Fortunately, the entire family was unharmed. Teddy and Mary believed it was divine intervention that saved them. Once again, they rekindled their fighting spirit. However, this time they decided to emigrate to Australia, because Mary's sister, Amini, and her family were living well there. In 1990, Teddy studied and retook the exams to obtain a lawyer's license in Australia. In 1993, he opened an immigration law office. Mary took charge of internal management and coordination, while Teddy handled external relations and client acquisition. Teddy was highly competent with orders pouring in, quickly elevating them to the middle class in the community. As devout Catholics, the Gonzales couple not only set up an altar at home, but also attended Mass 3 to 4 times a week. They also placed great importance on their children's education, hoping that their children would achieve more success than they did. Therefore, they spared no expense in investing in their children's education. Clear rewards and punishments, all to ensure their children focused on their studies. However, this inadvertently sowed the seeds for a tragedy many years later. On July 10, 2001, the Gonzales couple each drove to work. Their son Sef was also very busy that day. In the morning, he went to school, in the afternoon he went to his father's law office, and in the evening he had plans with friends. Only their daughter Claudine stayed home to relax. She was reading and chatting with friends. Yesterday was Claudine's 18th birthday, and she still wanted to continue celebrating, so she was texting friends to make plans. But before they could finalize any plans, Claudine became unreachable. At 11:45 p.m., Sef arrived home, and 3 minutes later, the video scene appeared. After calling the police, Sef immediately sought help from the neighbors. When he said that he had seen 2 figures, the neighbors were so alarmed that they called the police again. Seeing Sef still wanting to rush into the house, one neighbor held him back. Unexpectedly, Sef shouted, "I know CPR," before finishing his sentence, dashed into the house. The neighbor, risking danger, ran after him, pulling Sef back outside. Although the police and medical personnel arrived at the scene within minutes, it was too late. Teddy, 46 years old, Mary, 43 years old, and their daughter Claudine, 18 years old, had all perished. Medical personnel found that none of the 3 had been shot, but were instead killed with a sharp object, particularly noting a large wound on Mary's neck. Subsequently, a canine unit was deployed to search for the 2 figures Sef had seen. Perhaps due to the rain that night, the dogs could not find any trace. Seeing Sef collapsed on the ground, Senior Constable Mai first comforted him before asking about any unusual occurrences recently. Sef recounted that after his sister's birthday party the previous night, while the family was driving home, they encountered an attack on the road. A car sped past and shouted, "Die, you Asians." This remark caught Mai's attention. He had always wondered about the strange writing on the wall at the scene. Now he had a lead for his investigation, a racially motivated attack. At 3 a.m. on July 11, Sef gave his statement to the police detailing his schedule for the day. At the time of the crime, he was out with friends, and their meeting was pre-arranged the day before. Sef had a clear alibi. The police ruled out suspicion of him. On July 13th, Sef held a press conference and offered a reward of odd $100,000 for any information leading to a clue.
To picture the 4 corners of the world. In my world, we were the 4. My family, friends, and myself would like to ask anyone out there to please help us.
However, as the investigation progressed, more doubts emerged, suggesting that this might not be an attack targeting Asians. Nearly $81,000 in cash was found intact in Teddy and Mary's wallets, indicating that the culprit did not act out of a desire for money. The house was very clean and tidy. Although the wardrobes and drawers in each room were opened, clothes inside were neatly arranged. All 3 victims were brutally murdered. Besides the large wound on Mary's neck, Claudine also had 7 stab wounds and multiple blunt force injuries. The dent on the wall in her room served as evidence. 2 missing kitchen knives were later identified as matching the wounds on the victim. The 6 dogs in Teddy's house were unharmed and were all locked in the laundry room. The only point of forced entry was the kitchen window. No fingerprints were found on the kitchen counter. The investigation revealed that the window frame had been pried open after the incident occurred. The time of death for the 3 individuals varied, with the entire process taking at least 3 hours. After measuring the victims' body temperatures, it was discovered that Claudine and her mother's body temperatures were lower than the father's, indicating that the mother and daughter died first. The bloodstains on the briefcase and handbag at the scene showed that they were not dropped during a struggle, but were deliberately placed there afterward. Therefore, the police gradually shifted their focus. First, they precisely determined the time of death for each victim. By examining the call log, they concluded that Claudine was murdered between 4:10 p.m. and 4:30 p.m., as the last message she sent was at 4:10 p.m. The open book on her desk indicated that she was studying at the time. Mary's time of death was around 5:30 p.m. She had left work at 4:50 p.m., and it would take about 30 to 40 minutes to drive home. She was attacked as soon as she entered the house, which could be determined by the shoes she was wearing. Usually, after coming home, she would change her shoes and place her handbag in one of 2 fixed spots. Teddy's time of death was around 7 p.m. After leaving work at 6:23 p.m., he made 2 phone calls to the house. He too was attacked as soon as he entered the house. This could be inferred from the position where he was attacked, his work attire, and the briefcase beside him. If this were an attack targeting Asians, the perpetrator could not have patiently waited for each person to return home, forgotten to bring a weapon, and had to use items found at the scene. After murdering everyone, they would then calmly take a shower, as indicated by the water residue found on the bathroom floor. 6 days after the incident, police asked Sef to recount the events of that evening. This time, the police discovered inconsistencies in his testimony. Sef stated that he arrived at the front of his house around 6 p.m. Before getting out of the car, he received a message from a friend informing him that dinner had been postponed by 2 hours. After receiving the message and due to the rain, Sef did not get out of the car, but called the landline, though no one answered. He then drove off to meet another friend to pass the time. This friend lived in Blacktown, a town 28 kilometers away, and had recently moved, though Sef spent 2 hours searching, couldn't find the address. At 8 p.m., Sef finally met up with his friend. They had dinner and played video games until 11:45 p.m., after which he drove home and called the police. Sef particularly emphasized that when he discovered his sister Claudine, she was bleeding and he attempted to perform CPR on her. However, the claim that Sef couldn't find his friend's new address for 2 hours seemed clearly implausible. Additionally, the forensic report directly contradicted Sef's second statement. Claudine had been dead long before she was found. At that point, she could no longer be bleeding, and her heart was not beating. Moreover, there were no signs of CPR on her body. Furthermore, Sef had initially said that he saw 2 figures, but after multiple reconstructions of the scene, police concluded that when Sef drove into the garage and then entered the house from the garage, the noise would have been loud enough to alert anyone inside to flee. It would have been impossible for Sef to see them. It appeared that Sef, the sole survivor of the family, was highly suspicious. The police focused on searching his room and found paint stains on his clothes that matched the paint used in the writing on the wall at the scene. They also seized his computer and an empty shoebox. the police purchased a pair of shoes identical to the ones in the empty shoebox. And upon comparison, they discovered that the footprints in the blood at the scene matched those shoes. Furthermore, Sef's computer history from February to July 2001, nearly 6 months, showed that he had been searching for keywords related to poisons, toxic plants, etc. Following this lead, the police found that Sef had purchased seeds of a highly toxic plant on June 24, the name of which had been banned from publication by court order. Coincidentally, a week before the murders on July 3rd, Sef's mother Mary had to be hospitalized due to severe stomach pain and diarrhea. She recovered after a day. At the time, the doctors diagnosed her with colitis because her test results didn't match food poisoning. However, the police now had reason to believe that Mary had been poisoned by those plant seeds. On August 9th, the police interrogated Sef the third time, claimed that he had bought the poisonous seed as he was heartbroken and suicidal, which was yet another clumsy lie. But the police still didn't have any direct evidence to confirm this, so they decided to release him while tapping his phone and setting up a parallel sting operation. Interestingly, Sef had not only aroused the suspicion of the police, but also of his friends and relatives, who felt that something was off. For instance, on the day of the press conference, Sef had deliberately met with the family accountant to inquire about the inheritance. At the funeral, he sang "My Way," shocking more than 300 guests in attendance. He then moved into a luxury apartment and used the state compensation money to upgrade his mother's car. 2 months after the incident, Sef lied, saying that he had brain cancer and needed AUD 190,000 for surgery. He even sent fake medical documents to his relatives to scam them out of money. However, the fake documents ended up in the hands of the police. Not only did Sef not receive the AUD 190,000, but his future state compensation was also suspended. With no money to spend, Sef began selling jewelry, watches, and his parents' 2 cars. With some cash in hand, he promptly ordered a Lexus worth AUD 173,000. The salesperson, slightly concerned, reminded him, "This car is quite expensive." Without hesitation, Sef replied, "Don't worry, I'm getting an inheritance." Sef's aunt, Emily, on the evening of the incident around 6 p.m., stopped by her sister's house while picking up her son from school. At that time, she saw Sef's car parked in the garage. The house was eerily dark and quiet. Emily rang the doorbell 3 times, but no one answered. She was about to go around to the side door to look in when she saw a figure moving inside the house. At that moment, she thought it was just a clothes hanger. Upon closer inspection, Emily suddenly remembered that her sister's house had 6 dogs, but she didn't hear a single bark. The more she thought about it, the more frightened she became. So she took her son home first. She clearly remembered that it hadn't started raining at that time. Besides Aunt Emily, a client of Teddy also saw Sef's car. This person came to deliver some documents around 4:15 to 4:30 p.m. and noticed Sef's car parked in the garage. Sef's car was easily recognizable as it was a blue Ford, unmistakable. 2 months after the incident, police's trap plan paid off. An undercover officer befriended Sef by complimenting his fashion sense. Once they became closer, the officer deliberately bragged that he had an inside source at the police station. Sef took the bait and asked him to gather information about his family's case. Following the police's instructions, the undercover officer intentionally leaked to Sef someone had seen his car parked in the garage at around 4 p.m. on the day of the incident. The police wanted to see how Sef would fabricate a new lie to cover up his previous one. Sure enough, after learning of this, Sef quietly prepared a second alibi. By January 2002, he brazenly confronted the police, changing his statement to say that he had actually arrived home before 4:30 p.m., didn't enter the house, Instead, he claimed he took a taxi from home to a brothel, past the time. The reason he hadn't mentioned this earlier was that it was an embarrassing matter that he was too shy to reveal. However, Sef was unaware that his phone had been wiretapped. Sef repeatedly called the brothel to inquire if they had cameras, how long they had been open, and if there were any copies of customer logs, etc. All these questions were recorded by the police. More importantly, the sex worker that Sef mentioned, taken a week off, and was not present during the days before and after the incident. His lie was exposed, and Sef then claimed he might have mistaken the person, even going so far as to arrange for a taxi driver to testify on his behalf. However, the truth was that this taxi driver had only received 50 Australian dollars from Sef, write and sign a false statement. By this point, police were certain that Sef was the killer, but they still needed more concrete evidence to officially indict him. Interestingly, the evidence that the police were struggling to find was handed to them by Sef himself. After hearing the leaked information from the undercover officer that someone had seen his car at 4:30 p.m., Sef completely trusted that the officer had an inside source at the police station. He then asked him to gather more information and sent along a sketch of the crime scene drawn by Sef himself. The sketch even included notes detailing the time of death, each victim. It's important to note that detailed information about the time of death never been publicly disclosed by the police. Only the perpetrator would know these details. Moreover, the handwriting on the sketch, after comparison, matched the writing found at the crime scene. Notably, before officially arresting Sef, an event that seemed premeditated occurred. On the evening of June 10, 2002, police received a report of an assault. Around 8:30 p.m., police arrived at the scene and found Sef with a minor facial injury, lying in a ditch. He claimed that someone had put a plastic bag over his head and assaulted him, but he couldn't see who it was. However, after examination, the doctor concluded that Sef had no head injury. This clumsy act made the police realize something. Sef had mentioned the executor of the will, who was his grandmother. It turned out that on February 23, 1998, Teddy and Mary created a joint will. Regardless of who died first, the entire estate of the deceased spouse would be inherited by the surviving spouse. If both died, the estate would be divided equally between Sef and Claudine, with the grandmother serving as the executor. Police were concerned that Sef might attempt another scheme, pretending that his grandmother was also attacked and accidentally killed. Unable to delay the investigation any further, at 8 a.m. on June 13, 2002, police arrested Sef on charges of murder. After Sef's arrest, little-known stories about the family gradually came to light. The reasons behind Sef's brutal actions against his loved ones may be somewhat understood through these stories. His father, Teddy, and mother, Mary, worked diligently and finally achieved the life they had always wanted after many years of effort. The couple had accumulated assets worth about 1.5 million Australian dollars, approximately 25 billion VND, current exchange rate, and 1.3 million pesos, approximately 563 million VNDs, current exchange rate. They were not only strict with themselves but also with their children. Anyone who did well would be praised. This made Sef crave recognition from a young age. Sef's parents wanted him to become a cardiovascular surgeon, while his sister Claudine was expected to become a teacher. However, in reality, Sef was a poor student with a passion for singing. After graduating from high school, he wasn't accepted into any universities offering medical or law programs. In 1999, his father, Teddy, tried everything to get Sef into the medical program at the University of New South Wales. His parents insisted that Sef give up music, focus on his studies, and arranged for him to do odd jobs at the family's law firm, hoping that even if he couldn't become a doctor, could still inherit the family's business. But no one expected that just 2 years later, Sef would drop out. The reason he gave for dropping out was that he was too busy, so busy that he had no time to attend class. He was not only the lead singer of the band Definitive Vibe, but also had a fan club and his own website, created by fans. The website featured photos of Sef performing, showing off his body, lying among dancers, and more. With his music career skyrocketing, there was no time for studying. Father Teddy was helpless. By mid-2000, he once again had to pull strings to get Sef enrolled in law school at Macquarie University. To encourage his son, he even gifted him a car. Sef was very fond of the car and went so far as to have a personalized license plate with his name on it. Strangely, after that, Sef's academic performance suddenly improved drastically, consistently maintaining high grades. Every time a report card was sent home, Sef would be overjoyed because his parents would not stop praising him. Once, Sef kindly showed his sister how to secretly change her grade from 75 to 99.9. As a result, she was immediately warned by their parents that if she didn't study well, car would be confiscated. The sister not only told their parents about Sef's grade alteration, but also revealed another of his secrets. Sef had been wetting the bed frequently since childhood. Each time, his mother had to wash his clothes and bed linens. He sometimes grumbled that he should see a psychologist. This embarrassing issue naturally became a joke among the relatives. Perhaps from that point on, Sef began to harbor the idea of poisoning his family. Of course, Sef's parents were also very strict with their daughter. When they discovered she was in a relationship, they immediately sent her to Melbourne for high school. It's said that Sef helped his parents break up the couple by sending a threatening email to his sister's boyfriend. Coincidentally, at the end of May 2001, the girl Sef had been dating for 2 weeks also wanted to break up. To win her back, Sef gave her a necklace and promised to introduce her to his parents. The result was predictable. Sef was dumped, just like his sister. Sef wanted to resist, but his mother told him that if he continued to see that girl, he would no longer be welcome in the family. Sef realized that he was increasingly unable to control his own life, always being threatened by his family with car confiscation, being disowned, losing inheritance rights, and so on. All these things, to Sef, were like a ticking time bomb. The fuse was lit when Sef received poor grades in 2 subjects. He tried to use a medical certificate for an upper respiratory infection to request a retake from his teacher, but his efforts failed. He remembered his parents' harsh words. "If you don't study properly, go back to the Philippines. Nothing in Australia will concern you anymore." Sef was unwilling to accept this. Clearly, all these things would eventually belong to him. He thought how great it would be if he could decide everything. On June 24th, Sef began his plan A of poisoning. That day, he ordered a batch of poisonous seeds. The next day, he checked the order and found it hadn't been delivered yet. He then learned that the supplier was on holiday. So Sef immediately emailed them, lying that his mother was about to turn 60, and the seeds he ordered were meant to be a birthday gift for her, because she had seen them in Florida last year and liked them very much. He asked the supplier to expedite the delivery. In reality, Sef's mother was 43 years old that year and had never been to Florida. On June 29th, Sef received the seeds as he had hoped. On that very Friday, after receiving the seeds, he soaked them in hot water, then mixed the water with his mother's food. On July 1st, Sef's mother began to show unusual symptoms. On July 3rd, she was hospitalized in critical condition. By the afternoon of July 4th, she was discharged. Her health stabilized. To create a false scenario that his mother had suffered from food poisoning, on July 2nd, Sef wrote 3 letters addressed to his mother's favorite food manufacturer, the police station, and the quarantine agency. The content of the letter to the manufacturer read, "3 of your company's products been poisoned and are now on the market. Haha, this is the consequence of mistreating employees." The other 2 letters accused the factory of loose management, leading to food safety issues, failing to recall harmful products in time, not apologizing to the public, and so on. Sef's goal was to make people think that his mother had died from food poisoning, thereby diverting suspicion away from himself. Sef even faked stomach pain when he was at the hospital. However, Sef did not anticipate that his mother would recover. Later, the police speculated that Sef had likely extracted the poison incorrect. A few days later, on July 6th, Sef had a fierce argument with his mother over his breakup. When she scolded, "If you continue to see her, don't step foot in this house again," Sef was all too familiar with such words. Previously, his sister had been sent to Melbourne for the same reason. Sef was in agony, fearful of being sent back to the Philippines. He felt suffocated, under pressure, especially lately when his sister was home for summer vacation, and their parents treated the 2 siblings completely different. His sister was showered with praise, while he was harshly criticized. After his sister's 18th birthday party on July 9th, Sef felt isolated from the family. His car was confiscated, his allowance was reduced. Once his grades were released, his days would become even more unbearable. The more Sef thought about it, the more panicked he became. At this point, the people he wanted to harm were not only his mother, but also his father and his sister, who would compete for the inheritance with him. Knowing that his sister would return to Melbourne on July 12th, Sef decided to act the next day. He had already arranged to have dinner with his friend Sam DiCillo at 8 p.m. the following evening. The next morning, Sef went to school and worked at the family business as usual. At 4:15 p.m., he arrived home and retrieved a baseball bat that he had prepared from the car trunk. Feeling it wasn't enough, went into the kitchen and grabbed 2 more knives. Sef quietly went upstairs to his sister's room. At that moment, all the grievances and humiliation he had endured over the years flooded back. Wetting the bed, changing grades, being threatened to be sent back to the Philippines, and so on. Sef resented his sister for exposing all his lies. Without hesitation, he raised his weapon and attacked. 5:30 p.m. As soon as he saw his mother enter the house, Sef immediately lunged at her. By this time, Sef had completely lost control. He patiently waited for over an hour until his father, Sef Gonzales, came home. After everything was done, Sef began rummaging through the briefcase, opening the wardrobe, dismantling the kitchen window, then changing his blood-stained clothes and taking a shower. Finally, he calmly staged the scene to look like an attack targeting Asians, spray-painting racial slurs on the walls. However, even the slyest fox can slip up. Sef left traces of paint on his jacket. This was the only evidence that could prove he was at the scene. After 7 p.m., Sef disposed of the weapons, then arrived on time for his appointment with a friend, where they had dinner together at Planet Hollywood, and then went to an arcade. They played until past 11 p.m., during which Sef eagerly hoped that someone would discover his family, providing him with a perfect alibi. However, when Sef returned home, the house was eerily quiet. At 11:45 p.m., he realized he had to call the police himself. Earlier, while hiding in the house, Sef had seen someone arrive at 6:30 p.m. Because of this, he initially fabricated a lie about arriving at the house at 6 p.m. Sef was unaware that, in reality, at 4:30 p.m., one of his father's clients had also visited and seen his car. In fact, from childhood to adulthood, lies had become second nature to Sef, with almost nothing that came out of his mouth being true. Especially when it came to creating an image of success for himself, Sef's lies were blatant. In the eyes of his friends, Sef was a world champion boxer and a future music star. The song, Say, she performed at a wedding, supposedly earned him $1 million recording contract in Australia. Sef also claimed to have a stable job at the family's law office and owned a modeling agency. The models featured on the fan club website were just a small part of the roster. Lies, however, are like soap bubble. They might temporarily obscure the truth, but eventually they will be exposed. On May 20th, 2004, Sef was sentenced to 3 life terms and 1 count of threatening to contaminate food. Although Sef maintained his innocence, during the trial, the jury took note of a rare poisonous plant found in Sef's garden, which turned out to be the seeds he had carelessly discarded, now the most damning evidence against him. Sef might have been adept at lying, but his attention to detail was exceedingly poor. Do you remember the fan club website? You probably guessed it. Sef himself created it. In 2003, the house was put up for sale. The once happy home had now become the haunted house of the Gonzales family, and no one wanted to touch it. Until August 2004, when a Buddhist couple from Taiwan fell in love with the house's location and structure, particularly the altar on the 2nd floor. Without thoroughly investigating the house's history, they placed a deposit of $80,000 odd. However, upon reading about the house's past in the news, they felt deceived and demanded a refund from the real estate agent. Initially, the agency refused to return the money, with the 2 agents in charge insisting, "We did nothing wrong. Why should we tell you if you didn't ask?" The situation escalated, and the local fair trading office got involved in the investigation. In the end, the $80,000 deposit was refunded, and the offending real estate agent was fined 21,000 AUD, violating fair trading laws. Additionally, the local real estate association was required to amend its regulations on advertising and selling properties to ensure that customers received complete information. Since then, a sign has been posted in front of the house, noting that it was once the Gonzales family home. The house's value continued to decline. On October 10, 2005, an anonymous buyer purchased the house for 720,000 AUD. This anonymous buyer told Woman's Day magazine that they would not let the house's past destroy their dream home. On October 26, 2021, Sef's 3rd appeal was denied. He is currently serving a life sentence as a particularly dangerous inmate, Goulburn Correctional Centre, in New South Wales. As for the meaning of the name Gonzales, Sef's father had promised to reveal it on his 21st birthday. Sef will never know its meaning for the rest of his life. The case of Sef Gonzales is not only a family tragedy, but also a reminder of the fragility of trust and love within a family. Sef's actions have led to irreparable consequences, and the pain he caused will forever be etched in the minds of those close to him. This story also serves as a wake-up call for all of us about the importance of facing difficulties with honesty and responsibility, rather than choosing the path of wrongdoing. Hopefully, from this case, we can better understand the value of forgiveness, honesty, and true love in life. Thank you for taking the time to watch today's video. If you found this content helpful, don't forget to hit the like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any future story. Remember, life always has its dark sides. The light of kindness and truth will always shine through. See you in the next video. Goodbye, and stay safe.